Okay, so we've got our recording. Okay, we are on time. It is 1 minute over. I'll keep allowing people to come in. Thank you all for joining me on time today. Those of you who are here, happy Friday to everyone. Before I get started, the house cleaning notes or the house notes, whatever they are, uh, it's time to apply. The application deadline for this exam is on the 31st, which let me look at my calendar. It's Monday. If you have not applied for this exam, it shuts off on Monday. There's no extensions. So please apply for this exam. I know I've talked to some of you who have applied. One person I talked to had a little bit of trouble. We went back to bat. They got in. So if you have any issues too, again, I'm on the committee. So if you have any issues with the application process, it's not my main function, but I'm happy to help you out. I want everybody to take this exam. So if there's again, would have run it. I'm going to say it 1,000 times a day. If you have not applied, do it ASAP. The deadlines, they always come up so darn quick. So please do that. Again, this is always recorded. We will be posted, and I've been sending up a link. So if you can't make the full amount, I get it, but we will have it recorded and I'll send it back out to you. If anybody has not received all the modules that I emailed out, please let me know. My problem is some people join the study group late, and sometimes I lose a little control, having to resend things. So if you need something, please ask me. I'm here to help. All right. So today we're going to talk about cheese storage and transportation in module 804. And we're also going to move into 805 because both of these are short modules. Then I'm going to review with you and start going over the best practice guide for cheesemakers from the ACS website. I mention it 1,000 times every training, and I want to make sure I actually go over some of it with you. So that's going to be it. So we're going to have a good full day talking about things. As always, please shoot me some questions. You're more than welcome to use the chat feature if you like, whatever you need. Okay. And always smile and share positivity with strangers. Life's too short. Okay. So, cheese storage. Let me get up here. Cheese storage and transportation. There's not going to be too many questions about cheese storage and transportation. You will get a couple, but this is not going to be the bulk of your exam. But just something to know as you are learning about cheese and becoming a certified professional that there's you're going from the dairy farm to the cheese maker to the aging facility. All of this kind of flies into and it affects all of us at every stage of the business. So here's what I've gone through and I've highlighted what I think are important and what I think could be questions. So storage of packed cheese at producer's facility. Cheese should leave the creamery at proper temperature. That's a given. That shouldn't be that hard. Cheese should be wrapped and packed in a manner that will protect it in travel. Description of the cheese, batch number, date, production, and other pertinent information should be packed with the cheese. This will help in the event of a recall. That one in particular stands out to me as could very likely be a question. So, in a way that, we could say, what information should be packed with the cheese from the cheesemaker as it goes to the retailer? And it should be A, description of cheese, batch number, date of production, all of that. So that when I'm reading it, I definitely see a question. And I hope I'm kind of getting you all trained into the sense of as you read to extrapolate questions from what you're reading, because that's where these questions come from. Again, these questions are written by people in the cheese industry who are going through information like this and saying, hey, that sounds like a good question. Note moisture content of the cheese for retailers. This will dictate which cheese can be stored out of refrigeration. Now, the best method for storing during transportation from the producer to the distributor, from distributor to retailer. Notice these are all a little bit different. Airship, proper packing, ice packs, etc. Now, that's very general. In the best practice guide for cheesemakers, there is specific information about shipping cheese and ice packs, believe it or not. So again, I'm always going to kind of push you a little bit towards that as well. Delivery by refrigerated truck or coolers, those are great methods. Identify specific retailer mandates for receiving cheese. You absolutely have to know your state and federal laws. Let's see here. Storage at distributor facilities. Rotate stock. First in, first out. That was on my exam. Does everybody know what FIFO is? Thanks. So you know what? You've already got one question guaranteed. You know one. So it's good. Just remember it. And again, my favorite joke, as soon as I get a dog, I'm gonna name it FIFO. It works on so many levels. Just think about it. It's funny. All right, refrigerate cheese between 34 degrees and 38. That's very important. Must meet local standards. I think they're going to try to stay away from questions and answers. It's like must meet local standards because if any of you have worked in several different stores in different counties, you know that health departments operate a little bit different from county to county. So it's hard to have one mandated fact. So they're going to try to stay away from questions like that. But what is a fact? Refrigerate cheese between 34 and 38 degrees. Boom, fact. Store cheeses by type in separate environments. That's always fun if you can do it. Keep cheese cool away from refrigerator fans. What do refrigerator fans do to cheese? Anybody that's been out there storing cheese? I know that some of you have gone through the life of putting a cheese next to a refrigerator fan in your cooler. Let's see. All right. So to tell you, I got to open the chat feature, Nathan. Come on, son. Do better than that. Goat cheese tastes like fur. That's funny. All right. Dry it out. Yes, it will dry it out. Um, the fans, coolers are meant to keep things cold and oftentimes reduce humidity. One cheese in particular that I see people mishandle often, and this is just a personal tip from my experience. Humboldt fog. Do any of you ever, Humboldt fog comes in paper? And sometimes, like that one in particular, if you store that in a cooler, what happens is you can actually see it drying out and the paper sucking itself to the cheese, and then the bloom on the cheese starts to grow into the paper. That's like just stands out in my head so much. A tip that I've always used for that, and this is if you sell through quickly, you don't want to do it if it's stored for a long time. But I always when Humboldt fog or cheese that comes in paper like that, I wrap plastic over it, and that has helped
Uncle
keep it.
Nathan?
Yeah, I'm on
Yeah,
my CCP call.
keep it fresh. Everybody hit mute if
Yeah,
you don't
what's up?
mind.
I was looking at
Hold on one
some of the vendors
second.
that
There we go. Um, Now again, you don't want to store it like that forever, but a blooming rind cheese you don't want to keep for that long. But that's just the best way that I could like, give an example to show you how that works out. All righty. Key factors in cheese displays that affect the cheese quality are packing, lighting, and storage temperature. Do you see how that turns right into a question? Anytime you have a statement and then you're given 3 to 4 reasons why, always say, okay, that could be a question. So, what are the key factors that affect cheese quality when building a cheese display? A, customer satisfaction. B, the humidity in the store. C, packing, lighting, and storage temperature. D, all of the above. That's how questions are formulated. So, all right. Perfect, perfect. We're going to keep rocking and rolling. On the other hand, let's see, what did I miss something on the last page? Paper. Now, storing cheese. I was going through this, and this really seemed a lot like a format ad in here, where cheese paper, yes, is absolutely going to be the best way to store cheese. But we all live in a world where we've got to do what we got to do, where we cut and wrap cheese, we put it in plastic. As a cheesemonger, Or anybody, I always tell people like I store cheese in a Tupperware box, naked in a box with, if they have similar moisture contents like cheddar and American Parm or Gouda. To me, they live in my cheese box, and it's fine. Um, and I'm mentioning all this because as you're going through this exam, I don't feel like they're going to ask something specific about cheese paper. I want you to know about it and know the why. Cheese paper is perforated, and it allows the cheese to breathe while keeping the cheese wrapped and protected from oxygen. So that's good, but I always feel like anytime there could be a couple different answers, they're probably not going to ask about it. All right, the delicate flavor balance achieved by the cheesemaker requires oxygen exchange and storage at proper humidity. Non-porous materials suffocate cheese, causing the dreaded ammonia flavor, particularly in soft cheeses. Non-porous materials also trap too much moisture within, accelerating the growth of invasive surface molds. I pointed out to read that to you because those are facts. Like non-porous materials suffocate cheese. You really can't argue with that. But it doesn't, in no way does that say cheese paper is better than everything. So those are the facts when you're reading through that you would hopefully you're extrapolating and using to study with. All right, store each cheese individually. Oh God, if we lived in a perfect world, I would. Sorry. Okay, label cheese and note the date of purchase. There you go. All right, we're gonna move on here. Internal attributes. What did I miss here? Low moisture aged cheeses can be displayed out of refrigeration. The FDA identifies internal and external attributes of food, including cheese, that support the safety of short term out of refrigeration displays. Before that, mold. Know the difference between beneficial mold and bad mold. With beneficial mold, the only time really we're dealing with mold is natural rinded cheeses that live in a cave that we really want to promote mold and yeast growth. Most mold is not bad. All right, internal attributes as it relates to cheese are defined as the inherent property of the food that helps limit bacteria growth. There you go. Research studies have shown that hard and semi hard cheeses are safe to display outside of refrigeration at the retail level. Now, the FDA has stated within the Code of Federal Regulations that hard cheeses can readily withstand short term out of refrigeration displays at a maximum temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, which is 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, that's a fact. So when you pick out something that's hardcore fact, FDA says readily cheeses that can withstand short term out of refrigeration displays at a maximum temperature of 77 degrees. That gives you something to work with. Examples of hard aged cheeses, semi hard cheeses include cheddar, Parm, Swiss, Emmental, Gouda, Manchego, aged up to 6 months. The rest of these really do read. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on here. Low moisture content, low water activity. The water activity value from a microbial standpoint is described as the amount of water that is available in a system of bacterial growth. I don't remember a lot of that being mentioned. I feel like that's starting to get real heavy in the test. Organic acids, sodium chloride. You need to know what salt is. And here, AW is available water equals the amount of water in cheese. That's what AW is, available water. And I don't remember any of that really being pointed out in the test. The hurdle concept goes back for many years. Read over that, but I don't recall that being on the exam as much. The Food and Drug Administration, definitely on the exam. So here we go. Shelf life, general guidelines. Natural and pasteurized processed cheese should last about 4 to 8 weeks in the refrigerator, while fresh and grated hard cheeses with higher moisture content should be used within 2 weeks. And then again, those are general. The more moisture a cheese has, the shorter the shelf life. That's a fact. The harder the cheese is, the longer the shelf life. Like Reggiano versus Brie de Nongy. Brie de Nongy, a lot of moisture. It's not going to last as long. Reggiano, aged 2 years, hard as a rock, meant to last a long time. Cheeses age more slowly in colder temperatures. They age more quickly in warmer temperatures. These are good, just little rattle off. Man, it's a good fact to know. Odor. Cheese. Soft ripened cheeses, if ammoniated, are too old. Odor can come from damaged packaging, dry cheese which is cracked, wet cheese, or expired dating. All righty, Best Buy. We're gonna get into this probably in the next couple of years. Best Buy, used by dates. The best if used by date tells you how long the product will keep its best flavor or quality. The term is not a safety date. Best if used by is like the manufacturer saying you're going to enjoy this more if you use it by this date. We in America, I know, have really gone out of our way, and I've got relatives. Was visiting relatives last weekend and ended up throwing everything away in my mother's house, all the spices and such, because it was like the best if used by. They look at that and they're like, it's got to go. Cheese, of course, we know is a living thing, and it's harder when you're on the counter. The trouble I always had is people would see like a piece of double creme brie, and it's got like 6 days on it, and it's like, oh, I got to throw it away after 6 days. I'm like, no, you smell it, it's still good. You taste it, and you can still eat it. It's hard to go by. Best if used by dates or general guidelines, as some foods may deteriorate more quickly than other foods, may last longer than sometimes suggested. It's the same way I always, for any meat eaters, the same thing as a steak. You can look at a date on a steak, but a steak in the package, you just look at it. If it starts to turn brown, and look bad, then it's going bad. Same thing with cheese. Many foods can be eaten after the best by date. I spent way too much time on that. I don't think that's on your exam. Sorry, that's more of a soapbox. Cheese storage and handling. Cheese loses flavor and moisture when it is exposed to air. That is a die-hard fact. That's good to know. Wrap hard cheeses such as Parmesan in tightly drawn plastic wrap. Store soft or fresh cheeses such as mascarpone in clean airtight containers. Wrap semi-hard cheese, including cheddar, in lightweight paper such as parchment. See how this is like you're starting to get little different guidelines here? Out of all this, the main fact, cheese loses flavor and moisture when it's exposed to air. That's what you need to pull out of that. Okay. See how that was a little short? Modulator 4. Let's see if this works. Are you all seeing module 805 now? Perfect. Thank you. I love it when things work out my way. Moving cheese out the door. All righty. Marketing and merchandising. So here we go. You're going to get some questions about this on the exam. And this is even maybe a little outdated. We can talk about some new things that are happening. Module. So moving cheese out the door. Cheese professionals should have the knowledge required to take the product to market. This area includes the marketing of the product by key players in the marketplace, such as the cheesemaker, distributor, retailer, and educator. And for each of the players, the various functions and methods marketed to sell cheese. So you will get questions about this. Again, I don't know specific questions, but I know the general roundabouts. One that I was reading through here, I didn't see it in here, but signage. I remember there was a question about what is the most pertinent information to educate customers that you should put on your cheese sign. So you got to put on your cheese shop owner hat and imagine that you are creating a cheese set. You picked out the cheese and you're putting a sign on it to read. All right, milk type, perfect. That's one great thing. And here they'll give you a lot of suggestions. And this is where one of the answers is just going to be way better than the others. So milk type, that's great. I want to know whether it's cow, goat, or sheep. But how can you take milk type even further? Country of origin is good. Raw or pasteurized. So milk type. So which animal? Raw or pasteurized? The country of origin is good. And say like a romance. label. Romance is usually going to be like the write up. Fromage d'Affinois hails from France. It is super ooey gooey, creamy, and double creme. Pairing suggestions, beautiful. So this is one area where it's a little nebulous, but they could ask you a question because one A, B, C, or D, one of them will be better than the others. And usually it's the longer one. So that's one of the tricks when taking multiple choice tests. It's not always that way. So don't just automatically go for the longer one. But when they give more detailed information and it's a longer answer, it has a higher likelihood of being the correct answer. All right, perfect. But that's so you will have to think like that. Um, you're going to have to think, they're going to ask a question probably about how do you choose the cheeses that would go in your cheese case? And that goes into, you know, doing research to see what in the marketplace, what are customers in your area already buying, you know, seasonality, what is local, things like that. So you're gonna get asked some questions. So you'll have to put your I'm building a cheese shop hat on. And if any of you are like me, we've all daydreamed from time to time about having our own shop, right? Although that's a tremendous amount of work. So here, developing an effective marketing strategy across platforms, establishing a clear brand and vision, promoting the retailer's identity, the buyer's cheese selection. You got to pick a distributor. So if you're working in cheese and you're buying cheese, like who's your distributor? Professional alliance brand, you promoting the products of a region or a distributor. Milk dairy marketing organizations. So like say if you're in California, you got the California Milk Marketing Board. If you're in Wisconsin, who do you want the support of? The dairy farmers of Wisconsin. Not everybody has that. Public relations. I see that exposure in local, regional, and national media press releases. That's fun, but let's go down to what I've already highlighted. Promotional education in-store tastings. This is really the meat of the matter now. Education. And it may shift a little bit in the questions that are going to get asked on the test, because that's where a lot of cheese shop owners are really branching out and growing their education department because that's the new demand. I was talking to the Antonellis out in Texas, and that's one of the big things when they went and got a second location. Their second location is more of an event space and education space because through the years they've realized that's where a lot of the money is. So that's just a real world application of what we're dealing with. In-store cheese tastings are a great way to introduce your customers to cheeses that they might not be familiar with. Right? No joke. You can conduct a tasting either passive or active. All right. What is a passive tasting? If I were to use the term, what passive tasting? What does that mean? Anybody out there? We're going to interact today more than me just reading. And then, of course, I'm going to be asking, what is an active? So get ready with that answer. All right, so here we go. Samples are left on the countertop. Perfect. Freestanding module with samples. No person sampling. Yes. So passive sampling is when you just leave cheese, you cube them up. Maybe you want to put some toothpicks in them, and it's got the little dome lid, but it's unguarded. Passive cheese sampling is right there. You got to sample cheese to sell it, but I dislike passive, no interaction with the customer. That's what I'm just about to mention. It's you have to have signage, you got to have pieces to sell, which this could turn into a question on the test. Is like, so what's what is the best answer for how do you set up a proper passive sampling demo? It's like you got to have chilled cheese with a covered dome. You got to have a trash can. You got to have product to sell. All that good stuff. Problem with that is we've all seen it, whether you work in a store or not. You've all seen a kid or just somebody open the lid and just lick their fingers and just go to town in there. It's just usually not the best way, the buffet method. So active, on the flip side, an active demo, what would that really consist of? And it goes into, which that's why we don't do it anymore, grazing, right, Melissa? That's it's a shame because the people take, you give them an inch and they take a mile. The problem is, once you get food dirty, you got to throw it away, and people don't realize that. But an active demo is really what us cheesemongers are. Even if you're in the deli, working the cheese shop sometime, you're a cheesemonger to me. But it's actively sampling cheese. You tell the story of the product. That's right, Kyle. You And that's what my personal definition, which is not on the test, but it's our job as cheesemongers to ensure the cheese gets to the customer the way the cheesemaker intended it to taste. So our job is to take the cheese in, hold it, take care of it, make sure it's still good, cut it, wrap it, merchandise it, make sure it's still good, and then sample it to customers, making sure it's still good. But you actively talk about the cheese, you actively hand over a sample, you make eye contact, and it gives you the opportunity to make a sale. So that's not necessarily on the test, but I just got to preach to my cheese folk out here. That's what we need to be doing to ensuring that we're doing the work to sell the cheese that the cheesemakers work so darn hard on. Okay. Active tastings allow the customer to learn more about the cheese and you build a relationship with the customer. This is where you really connect. And I think that customer service is coming back in a bigger way. That COVID had a negative impact on us. Of course, you're always going to have people who don't want to talk to people. That's going to be a fact. Some of you may not want to talk to people and you may want to get your groceries online. I get that. But more often than not, a majority of people love to talk. Majority of the people are on TikTok, Instagram, and they're watching cooking videos. They're watching a charcuterie board building videos. And people want to know more, and they also want to share what they know. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation. People used to love to tell me what I didn't know when I was working behind the counter. But with where I'm going with this is customer service. I think there's going to be a bigger drive now, and the stores that have better customer service are going to start seeing an increase in sales. Where if you backed off on your labor, I feel like the sales are going to go down. Okay, classes. I'm drinking coffee, so y'all can tell I'm really into things today. Cheese classes offer an inside look at the cheeses that are sold at the cheese shop. These can be as simple as a plate of 4 cheeses and a discussion and a handout on the cheese, along with detailed tasting description. Pairing classes offer an enrichment of information about how to use the cheese for entertaining and also give the customer a chance to try it before they buy. That's great. Classes also set you up as the expert. That's something that's not written in here. It's like it's great. We always think about the customer, which is wonderful. But when you put on classes, it is about the cheese and it's about the customers getting to taste it, but it's also establishing to your customer community, I know about these cheeses. I am the person to come ask about that. And subconsciously, when you teach, that's what happens. So I hope all of you at some point get a chance to teach a cheese class. It's real fun, and you do get to have great interaction with your customers. Cheese classes that offer recipes and how-to demonstrations are very valuable when trying to impress the high quality of the cheese and how important the ingredient is to the meal or recipe. There's nothing like tasting is believing. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. So class programs often add additional cost to the promoter, thus an admission charge for the guest. Class programs can also generate sales after the class and create a loyal base of well-educated clients and cross-promotional opportunities with local celebrities, experts, and visiting cheesemakers. This stuff wasn't on my test, but I got a feeling that this may be on this. It wasn't on my exam, but I feel like it's bigger now. Okay, so here, there's also maybe since social media is so huge now and growing every year, you're bound to be asked at least 1 to 2 questions about how to promote on social media. Uh, so read through these as well. This is fun. You know, everybody wants to capture everybody's email address. They can send out email blasts that we can all delete. Um, and of course, I had to update this a little bit. We got Facebook. So here's a good question for you. What age demographic are you not gonna reach on Facebook? Who do you think is not on Facebook? Young people. Boom, that's it. Sarah, you got it. Michelle, the young folks, Gen Z, millennials. So you got to think about it when you're running your shop or if you're doing marketing. I know that's a fun little question, but you got to think about it. You're not going to reach everybody on Facebook. The same thing that, the older generation's not going to be on TikTok. Maybe they are now, but there's so many different ones that you have to have an alignment of sharing your message. So if you're going to go on Facebook, are you going to go on X? Are you going to go on TikTok, LinkedIn? Are you going to have stuff on YouTube? Right now, I think the winners are TikTok and YouTube as far as reaching the younger generation. So my point is you can't just stick to one social media platform to push your business, to push your program. You're going to have to go through it all. And this again is knowing who your customer base is. If you're in a really ritzy part of town and you sell the most expensive wine and your customers are a little bit older, richer, and traveled, maybe you just need to stick to Facebook. But I don't know if that sounds like a perfect world. I don't think anybody's living in. At least I'm not. Okay, certifications. There weren't a lot about certifications on my exam. So animal welfare approved. This is great. We always need to treat our animals well, but I don't think that was asked as much. But it is a food label for meat and dairy products that come from farm animals raised to the highest animal welfare and environmental standards. I haven't seen that much, to be honest with you. I don't know if all of you have seen that on product. It's out there. Certified, humane, raised, and handled. That's great. This program is a certification and labeling program that is the only animal welfare label requiring the humane treatment of farm animals from birth through slaughter. Good to know. Now, what I do see on a lot of products is certified organic. This is something we were dealing with, not to get too far on a soapbox, but of course, in the United States, it was us as a country that bastardized our farming industry early on to kind of meet the demands, the food demands that our government was requiring of us. I think it was it back in the 50s or 60s. We wanted to grow, fence post to fence post. You got to farm all of your land, right? And that we kind of overworked our land. We wanted to get our animals bigger, so we started giving them steroids. We wanted our grass to grow bigger, so we started putting a lot of chemicals on our, on the land that we're growing the feed for the animals. And we ended up in a bad situation. And we kind of got a place in our country where we had to backtrack. We had to go, whoa, crap, this is all bad. I'm going to have something that's organic, something that doesn't have all that. If we just had to give them, if we hadn't started off the wrong path to begin with, we'd never need that. Um, and the reason I go into that so far is we're going to get to it, but that's where the Europeans came up with food programs of our operating and farming that we're looking to today to mimic. And they have protected products, right? Designation of origin, DOPs. Uh, they started their farming and their food producing. It started with wine, and then it moved to cheese and meats and olive oils. But they take more pride in making sure that they're growing their food and not putting pesticides, not using steroids and all that stuff. And they never started it. So USD or organic, I'm never knocking it. I wish we didn't need it. It's a great thing, but it's an expensive thing. So the labeling term, it indicates that the food or other agricultural products have been produced through approved methods that integrate cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that foster cycling of resources. It promotes ecological balance and conserve biodiversity. Biodiversity is a hot button word, and I'm with it. So know what organic is. You're more likely to get asked about organic than the animal welfare. Just throwing that out there. Kosher, of course, all kosher products must derive from kosher animals. In addition, the milk of impure cattle and game, like donkey milk, is prohibited. Here we go. So kosher, I don't remember a lot being about kosher. One thing that's not on here, see, I didn't even highlight any of these. What you will know, so please get a pen and a paper, and I'm going to tell you something good. B Corp. The letter B is in Bravo. B Corp and B Corp companies. I want to say there's 5 or 6 now cheesemakers that are B Corp certified. At Beehive, Cabot. Trying to think of them off my head. I need to do more research. But write down B Corp and look up. You can probably even just Google cheese companies that are B Corp certified. That was on my exam. That is so you're getting a lot of good stuff today. And B Corp in and of itself is it's like what we were reading with organic, but in a sense that B Corp is a third party uh, company that takes a look at how you run your business, how you treat your employees. Are you giving back to the environment? All this kind of stuff. So it's B Corp is the new hot thing to be in. That's on your test. Slow Food, I think, is cool. Slow Food is a global grassroots organization with supporters in 150 countries around the world who are linking the pleasure of good food with a commitment to their community and environment. Slow Food believes that everyone has a fundamental right to the pleasure of good food and consequently the responsibility to protect the heritage of biodiversity, culture, and knowledge that make this pleasure possible. Damn, that could have been a commercial. I like that. But you see biodiversity again popping up. All right, and now on some food labeling labels without certification, grass fed, raw milk, farmstead. You're not going to get asked a lot about, you will get asked what farmstead is. Who knows what farmstead, what does it mean to be a farmstead cheese producer? You will get asked this on your exam. What does it take? Or what's unique about farmstead? Cheese made from that farm only. Michelle, excellent. That's it. All the they use their own herd's milk. Gentlemen, yes, all the milk that comes from the cows live on the land or whatever animals. The animals live on the land. They're milked on the land. The cheese is made on that land. It's aged on that land, and then it's sold from it. So there's no outside influence, and that is the top shelf of cheese making. Farmstead, you will have to know. The problem is, I don't think there's a law in the United States where any government agency or any third party agency is following up to see if you label, you can call it. I can make a cheese and call it Farmstead. I could get some frozen curd delivered and make cheese and call it Farmstead, and that's a shame. Um, let's see, but I doubt you're going to be asked too much about all that except for Farmstead. You'll need to know what raw milk is for sure. All righty. So trademarking, considerations, and curating your product collection understanding. You gotta know your customers. Determining size of selection, creating an effective and safe display, customer service, and making the sale. So Zingerman's under customer service and making the sale. I in no way get paid for this, but Zingerman's has some good trainings. Zing Train has a lot of good information. I remember, and I'm going to be giving a presentation for you all in the next few weeks about service, where I talk about customer service, and I do give them credit, but I borrow a little bit of their information because I think I remember one question being from Zing Train about customer service. So we'll go over that later. All right, discussion. The food code uh, specifies that ready to eat, potentially hazardous food prepared and held refrigerated for more than 24 hours in a food establishment must be marked at the time of preparation to indicate the date by which the food shall be consumed or discarded. That's just good to know. All right, we're going to keep going. We're blowing through today. Again, please, I like to throw it out there. You're all responsible for the information. Please do read it. I'm just highlighting the more pertinent information. So cheeses that do not support the growth of listeria include hard and semi-soft cheeses such as cheddar, Romano, Colby, Swiss, and varieties and various pasteurized processed cheeses. Hard cheeses are manufactured with the moisture content not exceeding 39% as specified in Code 21 CR CFR 133-150. And semi-soft cheeses contain more than 39% but less than 50% moisture. That's too much. That just shows they're a little bit safer to eat. So pasteurized cheeses. Okay, let's keep going. So things you're going to need to know, again, you're building a cheese shop. What do you need to know to calculate your prices? Now we're going to get into a little bit of math. We're going to talk about it, but we'll have another review session. If you want to get the best training on math for this exam, visit my Institute Du Fromage YouTube channel and look for and just type in math, and you will hear Zoe Brickley from Jasper Hill go through math, and she is so good at explaining it. So I'm going to put that on you. If you go to my YouTube channel, Zoe Brickley does an amazing job of breaking down all the math for you. But you will have to know some things. What you'll need to know to calculate your prices. Uh, so price equal cost plus profits. Calculate your price, your total cost. To determine your cost, take into consideration everything that it takes to get your product, service to the market. Include purchases of supplies and materials, packaging, production, labeling, marketing, and sales expenses, overhead, administration, salaries, benefits. Oh my God. But that also can turn into a question. Like, what do you have to consider? You got to consider a lot. Your production costs are the sum of your direct variable costs, also called cost of goods sold. You will need to know what cost of goods sold are. So go through here, direct and variable costs, indirect and fixed costs. There's not going to be 1,000 questions on this. Don't worry, but you will have a handful, a couple. A cost per unit. All righty. What's your margin? And if you look at I think it's my IDF module 811 has specific um, formulas that you're going to need to know that are a little bit more helpful. So we got it. All right, so here you go. The gross margin, selling price equals cost of goods sold. So just go through here. You'll need to know your math. If some of you may be salespeople that do math, do this all day long. Great, or managers, wonderful. Some of you may not do all this all the time. I think they said a little birdie told me that last year there were about 10 math questions, and that people weren't expecting quite so many. That's just what I heard. Just what I heard. But it was more about cost of goods than it was fat and dry matter. Okay. So you guys, we'll spend more time on that. I just want to introduce the idea that you have the markup method. You will have to mark something up, and you will have to get the cost of goods sold. All right. Da, 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 da. This one's fine. I don't think. This isn't put in a way that helps me understand it a lot more. Again, module 811, just general formulas that you're going to need. It's much easier to read through. This is a little convoluted for me. All right. We are going through today. Holy Toledo. So fast. All righty. So those are two modules that we've covered. But I want to get you into, pardon me, I don't want to make you dizzy. Sorry, I got to go back up. Now we're looking at the best practice guide for cheesemakers. Thank you for hitting those modules with me. We'll come back to the modules next time. But this is super important. You've heard me say this phrase 1,000 times. This is on the ACS website already, and I have emailed it to you all. So this was my number one source of study for taking the test. Read this, please. If you want to pass this, the people who had a harder time taking the test told me they didn't really read through this. Throw that out there. So just read it. So here, this was compiled. It's got all the amazing people. Oh, so many big names in cheese helped put this book together. But this is for cheesemakers. So this is something that whether if you're in sales or if you're on the counter, if you're working in stores, you may not think you may not have your cheesemaker hat on all the time. This helps get you there. And also, there's a lot of questions that come from this particular packet, and I'm going to show you how to pick out those questions. All righty, so you'll see the chapters here on farm milk production, the design of farm buildings. There's a couple about that. There's a question or two about design of farm buildings. Animal health, that's huge. Animal health dictates the quality of milk. The quality of milk is important to every one of us that work in this dairy industry, from farming to selling cheese. Uh, Milking animal cleanliness, milking procedures, cleanliness and maintenance of milking equipment. So there's a lot of great information, and it's not too much to read. Then chapter 2, raw milk chilling, storage, purchase, transport, and receipt. So here, where we had a little bit of transportation information in my IDF packet, here it gets a much deeper, and it talks about transport, and this is where you really need to lean into it. Heat treatments for milk, holy Toledo. We're going to read that. We're going to read. It's going to give you all the pasteurization temperatures in here. So you can see we're going to keep going. Cheese making. Oh my God, bringing cheese to the market. Things that we just talked about. So we're going to visit some of these chapters and kind of back up what I've been saying, but also get a little bit deeper. All right, HACCP, hazard analysis risk. Oh God, you got to know that. Food safety plans, inspections. Yeah, this is money. Uh, Absolutely use this. Okay, so that's just a little bit of intro. We're getting past that. All right, chapter 1 on farm milk production. So I've read through this several times now. I've got a copy, I printed it out where I've highlighted it. I'm an old school guy like that. But here I've highlighted it on the screen for you to see. So the production of high quality milk is essential for producing safe, high quality cheese. The cheese may be produced from milk of a single herd, multiple herds, or blended from different species. The Pasteurized Milk Ordinance, or PMO, defines milk is the lacteal secretion practically free of colostrum obtained by the complete milking of one or more healthy cows, goats, sheep, water buffalo, and other hoofed mammals. The definition of milk. Do you think the definition of milk is important to everybody in the industry that sells cheese? Yes. So here's again, this is your study hat. The milk affects us all. This is what we sell. This is without milk. I don't know. I'm probably going to be cleaning bathrooms for a living. I don't know. But milk is important, so you have to know that. But you're going to get two definitions here. And you're going to need to know there's several things happening. The Pasteurized Milk Ordinance, so PMO. So here, number one, you need to know that there is a Pasteurized Milk Ordinance, and you need to know the acronym. Oh, Lord, acronyms. That's like the corporate world, right? But you need to know that because in some questions, then they may not ask you what does PMO stand for, but they may use PMO in the question without saying the pasteurized milk ordinance, if that makes sense. So that way you have to know what that acronym is. Then you need to know this definition, and it comes from them. So in the American Cheese Society, and I am aligned with this, milk comes from animals. Milk does not come from nuts. You may personally believe different, and that's fine, but you will miss questions on the test if you don't come in line with the fact that milk comes from mammary glands. That's where we're going with. Okay. So to continue on, and this is just like the first paragraph is a question in this book. I literally just gave you yet another question. Please note that the PMO definition of milk may become state law where it is adopted as such. Hopefully so. We're fighting about that. You know, you got your vegans out there, and it's like, oh no, people been calling nut juices milk for a long time. This is why we're certified cheese professionals. We're all going to be in agreement in this. The legal definition of milk as it relates to cheese manufacturer. And this is from the Code of Federal Regulations. So here you're seeing two separate, don't get confused. Let me do a little highlight on that one. So, Code of Federal Regulations, milk means the lacteal secretion, practically free from colostrum, obtained by the complete milking of one or more healthy cows, which may be clarified and may be adjusted by separating part of the fat therefrom. Concentrated milk, reconstituted milk, and whole dry milk, water in an insufficient quantity to reconstitute. Blah. It goes a little bit further, but you see they're basically aligned. So another thing is hiding in that definition. Milk is a lacteal secretion, that's from the mammary gland, practically free from colostrum. What is colostrum? Anybody know what colostrum is? So this is where, like, if you're reading something, if you don't know, if you see a word in a sentence and you don't know it, you need to look it up. So here we go. The first milk that comes from the mother after birth. Yes, Brooke. Yes, early lacteal secretion for your animals. Um, it is not good to make cheese with. Brooke, you're right. You're absolutely right. The first milking of the animal after the mother gives birth, sure, the very first milking, and it's with humans too, any mammal, right after you're giving birth, that very first milk, it's usually like very thick. I'm sorry, I've got a 5 month old, so this is all fresh in my brain from my baby and my wife. Um, that first milk is really dense, yellow. And what that does is it contains bacteria, and it contains a lot of nutrients and bacteria that go into the baby's belly and helps line the baby's gut. So it is imperative that that milk go to the baby. So that's just so colostrum will be on your exam. Another one. So now I'm thinking today I've already given you 10 questions. Holy crap, you're all are going to pass. But colostrum you're going to need to know. Um, that is not taken. It is not used by humans. That goes to the babies. Excellent. Like I really got into that for some reason. Okay, and now I'm just continuing on. And here, what I've done again, I'm just reading, and what I'm highlighting for you are things that pop out that could be easily put in as questions. And I hope that you're starting to see the world through my eyes while you're reading. And while you're reading on your own, you should be doing the same thing. Ooh, that sounds like a fact that could be a question. Milk is considered adulterated if it contains a foreign substance, foreign material, objectionable odors, or an abnormal appearance or consistency. It's like, what would be in milk for it to be considered adulterated? Boom, right there. Foreign substances, foreign material, objectionable odor, or abnormal appearance. Uh, and I think that may have been on my test. I can't really say. And here again, read all of it, but some of these just really pop out in my mind, and I hope as you read that it pops out for you too. Let's see. So I'm going to read the one that I didn't highlight. Safe levels and tolerance limits, including maximum residue limits, exist for chemical contaminants such as antibiotics, pesticides, or herbicides, and cleaning solutions. U.S. federal regulations define tolerance levels for antibiotics. Each processor receiving raw milk into their production area is required to have that load of milk tested for antibiotics. That, okay. Out of all that, boom. See, and sometimes it's like me when I talk. Sometimes there's just words. But if you listen closely, in there is going to be some meat to the matter. So that's what I would pull out of that. Each processor receiving raw milk in their production area is required to have that load of milk tested for antibiotics. The thing is, every load of milk is tested for antibiotics. When a truck driver goes to a dairy before they fill their tanker truck with milk, they test the milk on the farm. Once that then that once it's good, the milk goes into the tanker. Once that tanker goes into a cheese facility, before the milk leaves the tanker, it is tested again by the cheese facility. There's a lot of fail safes here to make sure that we don't get bad milk. All right. When milk leaves the healthy udder of an animal, it is relatively free from bacteria. That's a pretty cool. That, again, straight up, period. That's fact. When milk leaves a healthy udder of an animal, that's the key word though, healthy. And when reading the questions on your exam with multiple choice, you've got to read the entire question and know that. So it's talking about a healthy udder, not just an udder. So if it's healthy, it's practically free from bacteria. Some contamination occurs from the udder. So excuse me, some contamination occurs from the udder, milking environment, and the equipment. All right, do we see how that could be a question now? Where do contaminations of the udder occur? Excuse me. The contamination of the milk occur. It occurs from the udder, the milking environment, and the equipment. All right, the PMO bacterial limit for grade A milk is 100,000 per milliliter, whereas grade B raw milk is 300,000 per milliliter. Good milking practices achieve bacterial counts in the range of 1,000 to 10,000 per milliliter. Um, in order to achieve a good bacterial standard for milk at the farm level, one must recognize the sources of contamination and understand how they can be controlled. You will need to know the contamination. Where are the sources of contamination? So here they got design of farm buildings. All of this is up for questions. Again, I'm just kind of blowing through here and picking out very specific things. But like knowing in the middle of this, I'm reading what only dedicated footwear or boots should be allowed within the facility. May not get asked that, uh, but preventing all methods of footwear control should include walking through a sanitary foot bath, foam, or crystals. That I don't know if y'all have ever visited a cheese making facility. That's just a standard, and that could end up being a question. And here I find anytime you see bullet points, my brain is bullet points. It's really weird how that works. But anytime when you're reading, especially if it's in a textbook, the IDF material, or this, when you're seeing bullet points, those are meant to be little facts that can be digested. Animal housing must have good ventilation, adequate lighting, be kept in good repair, be free of rodents and birds, and be easily cleanable. That's a straight up fact. And again, I think that was a question on the test. Like animal housing is so important because it goes to the comfort of the animals where the milk is coming from. We want milk to come from animals who are treated well because animals who are treated well produce great milk. Great milk produces great cheese, and we're all happy. Um, but that is, hell, I'm gonna highlight that. That's hot. I like that. But again, that is easily turned into a question. When considering animal housing for your cows, what should you take into consideration? Well, I need to have good ventilation. I need to have adequate lighting. It needs to be kept in good repair. It needs to be free of rodents and birds, and it should be easily cleanable. Those are just facts. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm going to read a couple more of these before we move on. Buildings should be designed to prevent cross contamination between animal housing areas and milk handling processing areas. All of this is just see how this once they put it in bullet points, oh my god, it's kind of like a summary of what we were talking about. Um, Walls, ceilings, floors, and gutters must be constructed and maintained so that they may be easily cleaned. In barns where the animals are housed, the construction should consist of cement that can be swept or scraped to remove manure and organic materials, metal siding that may be washed, or a poly based dairy board. Wood may be used in physical support areas, taking care that it will not be used in areas that get wet. That may sound a little convoluted, but when coming into how important it is in our industry, it is. You're not going to get asked about every one of these, though. So please take your time, read through it. These are all good to know. Anytime these bullet points, read them. Um, let's see. There we go. And now we're going into animal health. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of information about the exam today. Animals in poor health can produce milk that contain human pathogens such as salmonella. It's okay. So even just coming in there, so salmonella is a human pathogen. That tells you that too. The major causative agents of mastitis. What is mastitis? Somebody out there, tell me what is mastitis? Infection of the udder, Michelle. Perfect. Mastitis is infection of the udder. Amanda, thank you. So when reading this, so major cause of infection of the udder, such as streptococcus, are not considered human pathogens. The presence of foodborne pathogens in milk is due to the direct contact with contaminated sources in the dairy farm environment and the secretion from the udder of an infected animal. Outbreaks of disease in humans have been traced to the consumption of unpasteurized milk and consumption of several types of cheeses manufactured from unpasteurized milk. So we all know raw milk is raw milk's great, love it, but there's always going to be a push to talk about pasteurization, and also just to be aware of what can happen if you choose to eat raw milk cheeses or drink raw milk. Again, I always think it's the same way as like oysters or seafood. I think we humans or we Americans should be allowed, if there is a statement, this is raw, consume at your own liking, the same way restaurants do with raw seafood and such. You should be able to drink raw milk, but just make sure it's from a reputable place. That was a soapbox, not on the test. Sorry. Milking animals that appear to be producing abnormal milk in one or more quarters must be milked last or with a separate equipment, and their milk must be discarded. This is good to know. And if any animal consumes or is treated with antibiotics or other chemicals, should be milked last or with separate equipment, and that milk should be discarded. That's followed heavily. Just I've been to a couple of dairies now, and they take that very seriously. And again, I know I preached it in one of my last sessions here that you know cows do get sick. All animals get sick. We get sick from time to time. If a cow develops mastitis and it's bad enough, that sometimes could lead to death of that animal. So if you don't want that animal to die, you need to give that animal medicine. But if you give that animal medicine, you're going to pull that animal from the herd. So you got to continue to milk that animal because that it just grows, but you're going to discard it. And then once the milk is tested finally to not have any antibiotics and no more infection, only then does that animal go back into the herd to give milk. So this whole no antibiotic craze that you see on TV, it's a we don't want antibiotic milk. You can still pull that animal out, but that animal doesn't need to die because we're standing on a rock of no antibiotics. I'm full of fire today. Sorry. Okay. The use of a strip cup. So here, this is on your test right now. Oh my God. Somatic cell count. We covered it in one of my IDF's packets not too long ago, but SCC, somatic cell count, will be on your exam. It's one tool used to evaluate the condition of the animal's health. Increased somatic cell count indicates increased inflammation, very likely caused by intramammary infection. Infection and disease are the result of failed milk production hygiene. So, somatic cells, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but when we're sick, our white blood cells grow, and try to help fight the infection. It's the same way here. So their somatic cells, they grow, they become more numerous in number when there is an infection because they're going to help fight the infection. So maximum permissible somatic cell counts per species. You need to know this. And just so you're aware, what am I on? Chapter 1, page 4. Wow, in these first 4 pages, you got at least 6 questions. But you need to know cow is 750,000, sheep is 750,000, goat is 1.5 million. Those will be on your examination. I guarantee you. The European Union, it's different. European Union, they may have stricter guidelines, but we're not going to really get asked about European Union stuff. We're going to see American Cheese Society, where you are going to get asked about European cheeses. A lot of their regulations aren't really up for grabs right now. As the somatic cell count increases, the bacterial count of the milk may also increase. Causative organisms of mastitis include, but are not limited to, major pathogens such as Streptococcus, a lot of all of these. Look at all this: E. coli, Campylobacter, human pathogens including Listeria may also cause mastitis, as can Campylobacter species. Various studies in regards to mastitis have stated that for cows, somatic cell counts over 200,000 are an indication of chronic mastitis. Just go by this graph. We don't want to get too bogged down into that. I feel like this is good information, but a little more detailed than what they're going to be asking about. Know what mastitis is, know what a somatic cell count is, and know the counts per animal, and you'll be doing well. Poor barn hygiene and poor milking procedures can lead to contamination of milk by enteric pathogens such as E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, Campylobacter, and the rest. All right. So coming back down here, so at the end of these chapters, at the end of these sections, and every one of these, you're going to get these bullet points, the controls. These are good to know. These are just good things to pop into memory. Um, so monitor animal health and maintain vaccination program under veterinary supervision, isolate and treat sick animals with precautions in place to prevent milk contamination, separate treated milk from the main milking string, is milk them last. Everything I've been talking about. Institute a mastitis control program that includes regular monitoring of SCCs, observation of fore milk prior to milk collection, segregation and disposal of milk from infected animals, and treatments protocol, including adequate withdrawal time for treated animals. That, to me, sounds like a question. Perfect. And we're just going to keep going. I got y'all for a few more minutes. Any questions so far? Comments? Snide remarks? Great. Thanks. All right. Milking animal cleanliness. Cleanliness of the milking animal is directly related to animal health and the prevention of pathogenic organisms contaminating the milk. What is directly related to animal health and the prevention of pathogenic organisms containing the milk? A. Cleanliness of the milking animal. Boom. Ready to go. Nice question. Bedding sources that are clean, dry, and comfortable will minimize pathogen growth. All of this I feel like is great information as well. That's why I preach about this packet. It has most of the things you ever need to know are going to be right here. Controls manage practicings to reduce teat end exposure to environmental mastitis pathogens, which are often present in organic bedding sources and wet, muddy pens. That tells you where. So the thing is, cows can get sick from other cows. They can get sick from the milker's hands. They can get sick, or sick from their environment. And in their environment, If cows are going through it, if they're in a dirty pen and there's manure everywhere and they're dragging around in manure and urine and living in that and it's nothing ever clean, they're going to get sick. Um, so that's why cleanliness is next to godliness when it's talking about that, right? Perfect. We got milking procedures. Read all this. I'm going to wrap it up here in a few minutes, but I know, here we go. More than I skipped over some of it. Again, read it all, guys. But here we go. 1.5 cleanliness and maintenance of milking equipment. Meticulous cleaning and maintenance of milking equipment prevents the presence of bacterial biofilms that may contain pathogens, spoilage microorganisms, and other bacteria harmful to the safety of the cheese making processes. So, here, biofilms. That's the thing I wanted to point out. Bacteria biofilms. That's going to pop up. I remember one question talking about that. So, just know biofilm, bacterial biofilms. Continue reading about that. That's why I wanted to highlight that. And then again, the controls. Um, these are fun facts that's just going to get in your head and you're going to get some questions out of here. But from here, all right, chapter 2, raw milk chilling, storage, purchase, transport, and receipt. And you see all this stuff I've highlighted. We're going to get some good stuff right now. Milk leaves an animal at the body temperature of the animal from which it comes. Weird written sentence, but it makes sense. Milk that comes out of a cow is at the body temperature of the cow. For commercial milking species, temperatures range from 100 to 104 degrees. Think about it. Cows are bigger than us. They're going to run at a little bit higher temperature. It all depends on the species of animal, of course. Milk is virtually free of bacteria when secreted if the animal is healthy and in good condition. So, in this booklet, twice we've read basically the same sentence, that milk is virtually free from bacteria when secreted if the animal is healthy. The first question we read, if it comes from a healthy udder, that is practically free from bacteria. Another study tip I have for you, if you read like one booklet like this that comes from the ACS and you see a sentence over and over and over again, you're highly likely to be asked something about that. That means it's very important. So that's just a tip that I used that helped me out. Refrigeration reduces the growth rates of bacteria. Pathogenic and spoilage organisms are commonly of the mesophilic type. That's your word right now, mesophilic, growing best at moderate temperatures. Mesophilic cultures grow at temperatures between 50 to 113 degrees Fahrenheit. And I want to point it out again. Do you see how that they have the Fahrenheit with the Celsius next to it in parentheses? They're going to do that on the test. They're not going to trick you. They're not going to give you the correct Fahrenheit and the wrong Celsius to mess with you. Don't worry about that. So my point is just focus on 1 degrees. Sadly, we're brought up here in the Fahrenheit world, so that's kind of what I remember and what I'm familiar with. So they're not going to mess with you, but they're always going to have the Fahrenheit and the Celsius, but they're never going to mess you up with them. It's all they're going to be they're going to be correct in and of themselves. All right, so mesophilic, moderate temperatures, 50 to 113. Those are pathogenic organisms that grow at those temperatures. So cooling the milk rapidly slows the growth of these microorganisms. What is one thing you can do to reduce the growth of mesophilic microorganisms? A, spit in it. B, add chocolate to it. C, cool the milk down rapidly. That's it. Sorry, my first two answers were horrible, but you see, like that's how the questions will go. They won't be so silly though. Organisms that grow at or below temperatures of 45 degrees Fahrenheit with a generation time of 9 hours or less are known as Psychiotrophic. Psychiotrophic. That's so mesophilic, you need to know. Write that down. Psychotrophic, you need to know. Uh, both are bacteria, but they grow at different temperatures. So you have to treat them differently. However, the optimum growth temperature is 70 to 82 degrees, at which point the psychotrophic bacteria will multiply at a much faster rate. If milk is not properly cooled, psychotrophic bacteria will take over the natural flora of the milk. This will create issues in the milk supply as the psychotrophic bacteria produce uh, lipolic and proteolic, and proteolic enzymes that will cause the deterioration of the milk. So those are other words that you need to know. Um, lipolic and proteolic. So just in this first section of chapter 2, 4 important things to remember, 4 important words. It could be 4 separate questions on your exam. Perfect. Yeah, I wanted to drive that home today. That was important. Psychotrophic bacteria are from numerous genera or have been isolated from milk. You don't need to know all that. I highlighted it. That is a little bit into it. It's a lot, but you need to know about these organisms: mesophilic, psychotrophic, lipolic, and proteolic. Boom, big ones. Chilling and storage of fresh and frozen raw milk. Unless milk is used immediately after milking, it must be rapidly cooled to refrigeration temperatures in order to protect its quality. The PMO states that grade A milk must be cooled to a temperature of 45 degrees or less within 2 hours of milking. Fact. So see how that's just undisputable? The PMO states grade A milk must be cooled to 45 degrees within 2 hours. That is easily going to be a question for you. Oh my God, all y'all are going to be so great. Oh, I'll be so proud to watch y'all take the test while I'm monitoring you. um, when commingling milk with a previous milking, at no time may the temperature exceed 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and it must also reach 45 within 2 hours of the blending. So that doesn't happen a lot here in the States, but something like Parmigiano Reggiano, where they actually use a little bit of last night's milk to go into today's milk to get the bacteria cultures that grow naturally in the milk. That's an instance where that would be used. Grade B milk, also referred to as manufacturing grade milk, should be cooled to 50 degrees within or less within 2 hours after milking. I highlighted grade B milk as manufacturing milk. That's something that like all milk needs to be cooled within 2 hours. Like that's just a thing. But in my mind, I'm thinking grade B milk is manufacturing milk. That's what stands out for me. All right. Woo! So hopefully, so that's just a little bit now taking you to, and I know it seems silly that I'm reading these packets to you, but hopefully you do see that we're pulling out just really pertinent information, and I'm doing my best to hit those words that I know you're going to get asked about. But you have to take it upon yourself to look up some of this information and go through this journey by studying. But I'm just helping you minimize what you have to study. Um, awesome. Any questions as of today? Okay, well, I've got a surprise for you coming up next week. I will be sending out a practice quiz. Okay, so I'm going to be sending out a practice quiz, and I want to be clear about this. So I wrote the practice quiz. None of the questions on the practice quiz are on your test, and the practice quiz may not even be indicative of how hard the exam is. The true purpose of this exam, of the quiz I'm going to give you, is to help you take a multiple choice test. It's going to be, I mean, it's cheesy questions. They're not going to be questions on the exam, but there are some I pulled, from these booklets. They're just not like the hardest questions in the world. Um, but I'm going to send it to you, and in no way am I telling you that this is your exam. But again, I want you to take from it to like actually sit down and undisturbed if you can. I know it's hard. We got families and work and all that. But if you're able to just give yourself a little bit of time in a quiet room and practice doing multiple choice questions. And by doing that, that's just going to help prepare you. And we're going to go over the exam together on our next call. And we'll cover another module and go over the exam together. And I think it's good practice for you. Hopefully, some of the questions will get you good and prepared for questions on the exam. But again, this is going to be like reading a question and marking off what you know is not the correct answer. And kind of practice like how you want to take this exam, because it's just good to kind of have gone through it. Because I'm old. I haven't taken an exam in a long time. I don't know how long it's been since you all have taken an exam, so it's just good practice. Yeah. And then I'm going to keep sending out more information. I have created a list of cheeses that European cheeses that I think you should know. That's a little bit shorter than the hundreds of cheeses that actually exist. So I'm going to get that to you as well. And again, I don't I don't know what they're going to ask about. I'm taking the standpoint of I'm going to point out some cheeses that are very popular around the world that any cheese professional, in my opinion, should know about, like Parmigiano Reggiano, Salers, Abondance, Charus. Some of these cheeses you may not everybody may have heard of. So I'm trying to help you to learn a little bit about some of these that are just really popular. Stilton, some of these that you absolutely need to know inside and out and know whether they have a designation of origin and things like that. So still more studying. And again, please read these booklets. I'm not going to read this whole best practice guide to cheesemakers to you. I'm going to go back to my IDF materials and going over that today. In this last 30 minutes, I really just wanted to expose you to this packet, remind you that you have it, and to please and to beg you to read it. Most of the information is in this packet. Wink. Just read it. Okay. Other than that, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so proud of each and every one of you. Oh, I wish I could give you all a hug and share a slice of pie. I'm in the mood for pie. Um, anyway, thank you all very much. I'll get that email out to you next week. I'll get this recording posted up next week, and we'll all have a great dandy day. Hope you have a great weekend, everybody.